Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, everybody. This is a YouTube exclusive, which means no Will Brinson, a win for everyone. So listen, make sure you subscribe to this channel to get nearly full 10-length episodes per week. Download and subscribe to the Pick Six Podcast for all the NFL coverage you could ever need with an increased focused. That's why we have me and Chris here today on the draft, which is coming. It's always in the rear view. It is going to be upon us before we know it. I'm joined by draft analyst from CBS Sports, Chris Trapasso. Chris, how are we doing today, man?
I'm doing really good, and I'm excited for a change to do a mock draft because I know how keenly aware you are of different players and switching around your picks every week. So this should be a lot of fun.
So we're recording this on October 29th. Happy Halloween if I don't see you people before Halloween. But more importantly, Chris and I have both done 8 mock drafts at this point for the 2021 upcoming NFL draft. So we, between that and summer scouting these guys, we're familiar with some of these players. But there'll be some players that have sort of burst into the scene as much as you can in this short and sort of weird 2021 college football season. So Chris, let's get right to it. Unless something drastically changes and the Jets trade for 22 new players, they're probably going to have the first overall pick. You are the Jets GM. Who are you taking with that number 1 pick?
It's got to be Trevor Lawrence. And all those 8 mock drafts that you and I have done, our write-ups have been pretty similar. That like the draft, if it falls like this with Gang Green having the first overall pick, really starts at number 2. And that's not solely a knock on Sam Darnold, because everyone can agree that the situation's terrible and Adam Gase is kind of a black hole of negative energy for every player that he coaches. But it just will be time for the Jets to move on a quarterback, move on a head coach. I still think Joe Douglas will be the GM, but Trevor Lawrence, best draft prospect since Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck. I think he's better than Andrew Luck as a prospect. This is a no-brainer for the Jets.
Yeah, so a couple things. I think Andrew Luck is where let's start the conversation in terms of how good he's been. And in fact, for me, you stand him next to Justin Herbert, and they're the same height, size, weight, hair color. They look pretty much the same. But this is what you were hoping Justin Herbert was going to look like coming out of Oregon. Justin Herbert just wait till he got to the Chargers to do that. So congrats to him because he fooled everyone. But I think this is a slam dunk, as you say. One thing. So before the season, Trevor Lawrence said, this is it. I'm done at Clemson. And then yesterday, the day before, he said, I'm planning on coming out, but we'll see. And so if you're Joe Douglas and the Jets, are you at all concerned that maybe Trevor Lawrence pulls an Eli Manning on you?
Yeah, I would be. I mean, things have gotten so bad, and the fact that Adam Gase still hasn't been fired, I think, is probably a little bit alarming for someone like Trevor Lawrence. Not that Adam Gase will be the head coach next year, but you start to question all the decisions high up in the organization. But for Lawrence, I mean, we see it almost every couple of years when there's a highly touted quarterback prospect. Does he want to go to this terrible team that has the first overall pick? I think it would be fine. Ultimately, he would be in that huge media market, the biggest media market in New York City. And really the only place for the Jets and their offense to go is up. So the expectations maybe for Lawrence individually would be high, but if they win 4 or 5 games next year with Trevor Lawrence as quarterback, that would be deemed as a win. So a little concerning if you're Joe Douglas, but I ultimately think if the Jets have the first pick, Lawrence will declare and they'll pick him number 1.
You mentioned this isn't a knock on Sam Darnold. I agree with that. And I think there's a situation where Sam Darnold's probably going to get traded, maybe for a 2nd or 3rd round pick to a team that's probably in a much better situation than the Jets. Also, you could go down the line, not maybe the top 20 picks as we have it laid out here. If those teams in it with the 1st round pick, they should take Trevor Lawrence. Every single one of them, except for maybe the Bengals, just because they have Joe Burrow. Otherwise, you could talk me into that. All right, moving on. Number 2 pick, the Jaguars, as Breach likes to call them. I'm the GM. I am taking Justin Fields. Coming into the season, Justin Fields looked really good last year, his first year at Ohio State, replacing Dwayne Haskins. There's some question marks about sort of getting through progressions and making sure he was targeting the right receivers, and there were some ups and downs with that, and that's to be expected. But he's so athletic. His arm strength is off the charts. And then he came out on Saturday and absolutely played as close to a perfect game as you could expect, given all the hurdles that the Big Ten that they faced. Gardner Minshew isn't the answer there. Mike Glennon clearly isn't the answer as the backup there. I think if you're number 2, Justin Fields has to be on your radar. How do you feel about Justin Fields, Chris?
Yeah, and I've kind of had this opinion of him after watching him in the summer, like certainly watching him at Ohio State last year, but really scouting him for the 2021 draft. I don't think talent-wise or just the position-specific skills you need to play quarterback well at the NFL level, that Justin Fields is that much farther behind Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he was the number 2 recruit to Trevor Lawrence a few years ago coming out of high school. He's big. He has a great arm. He's very athletic. All those things apply to Trevor Lawrence as well. I think Trevor Lawrence is better at getting through his progressions, but I think Justin Fields takes better care of the football than Trevor Lawrence does. And I agree, Gardner Minshew might be a good backup, very up and down. And when you're a 6th-round pick, you have to be up for basically your first 2 seasons to hold on to that starting job. So this would be just from positional value and the player that they're getting, an obvious selection again at the quarterback spot for the Jags.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about the closeness between Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. Barton Simmons, who heads up 247 Sports for us, mentioned that in the days following the 2020 draft, when, of course, we looked ahead to the 2021, and he said this could be a huge year for Justin Fields in his would be his 2nd year now at Ohio State. And I would say he actually throws more anticipation than Trevor Lawrence. Part of the offense, that RPO offense they run in Clemson. But there are a lot of things to like about Justin Fields, and there's no concerns about the arm strength, the accuracy, and, of course, the athleticism, as you mentioned. All right, Traps, you're the Bengals. You're on the clock at number 3. What are you doing to help Joe Burrow?
I'm calling in immediately for Penei Sewell from Oregon. You have Jonah Williams that was injured as a rookie. He's come back. He's played okay in the first half of the season, but watching any Bengals game, you see a ton of great throws at the intermediate level from Joe Burrow, but about half the time he's dropping back to pass, he's being pressured. So you can't have too many good blockers in Cincinnati. And Penei Sewell, 6'6", 330, but he moves around like he's a small center. Like he is truly a freak athlete, the best offensive tackle prospect that we've seen probably in 5 or 6 years. Whether you play him at left tackle and move Jonah Williams to right tackle, whatever you need to do, the development of Joe Burrow, and just so Joe Burrow is not taking as much of a beating as he has in the first half of the season, you have to pick Penei Sewell here.
That's right. Otherwise, you should take Trevor Lawrence if he's available, because your quarterback will be dead by week 2 of the 2021 season. Otherwise, because he is running for his life. This must be such a night and day change for him from LSU, where his offensive line was arguably better than it is now. I think with Jonah Williams, you can move him from the left side to the right side. There's some conversation coming into the draft last year that Jonas should kick inside. I think he can play tackle, and I think he'll be fine there. But Penei Sewell on one side. And by the way, the athleticism of Penei Sewell, if you watch the Auburn game last year from week 1, he's out on a pass. On a trick played near the goal line. That's how athletic he is, and there's a reason for that. I think he makes a ton of sense. He'll be raw because he hasn't played a lot. I'm fine with that. He's going to be really, really good. Number 4, the Giants are on the clock. I am Dave Gettleman. I don't know what I did to deserve that, but here we are. I'm going defense with Micah Parsons. I would love to have Penei Sewell if I'm the Giants, and, of course, if I'm Daniel Jones, because he's another guy who spends most Sundays running for his life. But Micah Parsons is so incredibly athletic at linebacker. That defense is terrible. And if you can't get a top-flight offensive lineman, I don't think there's another top 10 pick worth taking it offensive line, or at least top 7 outside of Penei Sewell. I think you go with the best defensive player. Micah Parsons, for me, is that guy. He is sort of what has become with the linebacker position in the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years in terms of these super athletes, can control the middle of the field, that can cover, that can get after the quarterback. And I think that helps this Giants defense, not as much as an offensive tackle would, but probably number 2 on that list for me.
Yeah, and I think that's a good pick because the Giants did just triple up on offensive linemen in the 2020 draft. I know Andrew Thomas has kind of been a revolving door there at the left tackle spot. Matthew Pert from Oregon or from UConn is there as well. But I think with Micah Parsons, what I like about him, he's looked the part. He was a big recruit, but he's looked the part of an early first-round pick since he was a freshman. And from 2018 to 2019, he made more plays in coverage. He looked more comfortable sinking in coverage. And for as good as a linebacker can be as a blitzer against the run, you have to be able to cover tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. And like you mentioned, with Parsons' athleticism, he can certainly do that.
And just so we're clear, Debo sent me a message, so I'm not reading. I'm pulling Brinson here. Just so we're clear, so the draft order is a reverse Super Bowl odds from sportsline.com. So you can yell at those people if we are offending your favorite team. At some point pretty soon, we'll probably just flip over to the actual draft order because we're on to week 8. So there's that to consider. So, next up, the Denver Broncos. Will they be picking 5? I don't know. I had a lot riding on Drew Lock this year. He is, turns out he's struggling a little bit. He's been injured, whatever. All right. You are John Elway, Chris Trapasso. What are you doing at number 5 with the Denver Broncos?
I'm going Alex Leatherwood, the offensive tackle from Alabama. For as much as I agree with you that there probably isn't another offensive tackle worth taking super high beyond Penei Sewell. Like you mentioned, I think this organization has a lot riding on the maturation of Drew Lock, and that with Cortland Sutton being injured, Drew Lock obviously going down earlier in the year, they've had a lot of injuries. And Alex Leatherwood probably would have been a first-round pick last year. Watching the film, watching Jedrick Wills, who went in the first round to the Browns, the right tackle there at Alabama, you just would look across the line of scrimmage and see Alex Leatherwood doing a great job against a lot of quality pass rushers in the SEC. Garrett Bowles has played better this year, but he's an unrestricted free agent heading into the 2021 offseason. They didn't pick up that fifth-year option. And then at right tackle, you have Elijah Wilkinson. DeMar Dotson's well into his 30s. It's another team with a young quarterback that they should not give up on yet. Just get him better protection. Alex Leatherwood's played right guard, but is best on the outside at left or right tackle. I think that's a little bit more of need over value, but that's what the Broncos have to do here inside the top 10.
Yeah, so Leatherwood for me isn't a top 5 pick right now, but again, I mean, we're 8 weeks into this thing. They haven't played the college kids haven't played a ton of football, and you go on what you saw last year. You try to project. That's the whole idea. You try to project what's going on, and I certainly understand the need there. I was just checking my mock drafts. The last 6, so we've done so many of these mock drafts. The last 6 this year, I've had them taking a cornerback or an edge rusher in Denver. Before that, I had them taking Rashawn Slater, the offensive tackle out of Northwestern, who can also play guard, and we'll probably hear about him a little later. So protecting Drew Lock certainly makes sense there. Number 6, the Falcons, who need about 10 picks, and they need to all draft defensive players. They only have 1 here at number 6. I have them taking edge rusher Kwity Paye out of Michigan. Huge upside guy. And I watched him over the summer, and I was like, okay, I see the athleticism, but I don't see the consistency in terms of getting after the quarterback. He plays on the other side of the line on defensive from Aiden Hutchinson, who's another guy who will probably be in the day 2 conversation unless he continues to play really well and maybe sneak into day 1. He's not nearly the athlete as Kwity Paye, but Kwity Paye looks the part. He looks a little bit like Bud Dupree to me, maybe an extra 10 pounds. He's fast, he's quick, he's strong. But again, I didn't see it over the summer every single play. Well, guess what? On Saturday, it showed up every single play. That dude was a man possessed. I know he spent the offseason trying to get better with his pass rush moves, and we saw that. Will he go 6? Probably not right now. But again, teams love athleticism. That they prize themselves on finding these athletes that can overwhelm these offensive tackles. And the Falcons need an edge rusher in the worst possible way. Kwity Paye overdrafted here. Traps, what do you feel about that?
I don't think it's overdrafted. I think he has the profile to go inside the top 10. Like you mentioned, the athleticism will be the first check box for Kwity Paye. And it's funny, I saw the same thing that you saw over the summer. You saw the size, the athleticism, the power. Pass rushing moves were not really there. But Kwity Paye got a huge draft stock boost over the summer when he was placed at number 1 on Bruce Feldman's freak list. And that's a list of just the top 40 most athletically impressive players in college football, and past number 1 players, Myles Garrett, Saquon Barkley, Tristan Wirfs, a lot of players that went pretty early in the draft. So I think at his size, 6'4", over 270 pounds already, and he's trending in the direction of showing better pass rushing moves, that would be a perfect fit. And I don't think number 6 overall is too high for him.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch him as the season progresses. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the Big Ten can try to get these games squeezed in before the end of the year. Number 7, the Dolphins are on the clock, which isn't necessarily weird because the Dolphins have been on the clock a lot in the top 10 in recent years. But this isn't their pick. This is their pick from the Texans on the Laramie Tunsil trade. Thank you, Bill O'Brien, who is no longer there. A year ago, the Steelers traded that pick to the Dolphins to get Minka Fitzpatrick, and a lot of people were concerned to be a top 5, top 10 pick. It ended up going in the 20s. This is going in the exact opposite direction. So the Dolphins have 2 picks in the top 10. At number 7, thanks to Bill O'Brien and Laramie Tunsil, who do you have the Dolphins taking, Chris?
I have them picking Wyatt Davis, the offensive guard from Ohio State. And that kind of seems like a bland pick, like, oh, offensive guard inside the top 10. Quentin Nelson turned out pretty well for the Indianapolis Colts. I'm not going to put Wyatt Davis on the Quentin Nelson pedestal at this point, but watching his film over the summer, extremely boring. He blocked everything, was a bulldozer for the run game at Ohio State. I think if you ask around, I'm assuming you agree, but ask around to any other draft analyst, Wyatt Davis is the consensus top interior offensive lineman. You still have Eric Flowers playing at left guard in Miami. They drafted a bunch of offensive linemen last year, but with Tua set to start, I think we'll start to see that the Dolphins need to fill out the rest of that offensive line. They've gotten some good play from a few of their other younger players, but Wyatt Davis instant starter, and I think he could be a really good guard right away in the NFL.
Yep, grown man. In fact, I had him going to the Dolphins in my last mock draft. In other mock drafts, I've had them targeting edge rushers, even wide receivers. So there's plenty of things they can do to get better. They're a much better football team this year than last year. But with Tua coming in, we'll see what happens. And certainly protecting him with a grown man like Wyatt Davis makes a lot of sense there. Number 8, the Washington football team. And if they were a little higher and they could end up being a little higher, quarterback is definitely in the conversation. And they could take a quarterback here, someone like Trey Lance out of North Dakota State. He's just so raw. And given what we saw with Dwayne Haskins not working out, I don't know if it makes sense to bring in another guy that needs to sit for a year when you're in win now mode. So knowing that, I'll let them sort the quarterback situation out either through free agency or elsewhere. I had them taking Jalen Waddle, the wide receiver out of Alabama. I know he broke his ankle, had ankle surgery. He should be ready to go by the combine, assuming the combine happens when it usually does in February. But this guy is so explosive. He is the most explosive player in college football without a doubt. He's only 5'10", about 180, 185, but it doesn't matter. You're not catching him. He's better in my mind than Henry Ruggs. He's not the route runner Jerry Jeudy is, but he's up there in terms of that type of playmaker. And I feel like he can do everything. And oh, by the way, he also returns kicks. And Scary Terry McLaurin, the dude does it every week by himself, but he can't do it by himself. He needs help. And I think the most interesting thing here for me, other than the fact they take Jalen Waddle, Chris, is that I have him going ahead of Jamar Chase.
Yeah, and really that was kind of the train that left the station over the first month of the season, that Jalen Waddle was making big plays in the return game, out of the slot, down the field, underneath, after the catch. I really think he fits perfectly with the modern day NFL, that if he was coming out 5 or 7 years ago, he would kind of be labeled as this slot only wide receiver or someone that you have to really scheme a lot of his touches to. I don't think you need to do that with him. And what I like about him, he plays bigger than 5'10", 185. He breaks a lot of tackles and his ball skills are fantastic. He plays to about 6'1" or 6'2", I think. Probably has 4.3 speed when he's fully healthy. And regardless of who the next quarterback is for the Washington football team, he's going to need better receivers. We're seeing a lot of these young quarterbacks that are playing really well due to the fact better offensive line and not just 1, but 2 or 3 quality weapons. I like the Jalen Waddle pick there. I would go Jalen Waddle or Jamar Chase, but I'm totally fine with Jalen Waddle if that ankle is 100% healthy.
Yeah, Jalen Waddle gives you a little something that Jamar Chase doesn't, and that's just explosiveness. Jamar Chase is a grown man for sure. Speaking of old Mr. Chase there, the Vikings are on the clock at 9. Another team that's fallen off a cliff that have a ton of issues. What do you think helps them best at number 9?
Well, this was tough for me because this is, I think, and a few of the teams that we just talked about could have gone Gregory Rousseau, the towering edge rusher from Miami that can really play anywhere, who opted out before the season and decided to not opt back in. But I'm going to actually go with Jamar Chase to the Minnesota Vikings. Yes, this could be a quarterback too. This could be Trey Lance. But I think if you look at Kirk Cousins' contract, the Vikings can't get out from it until after 2021. So this will help Kirk Cousins in what is likely going to be his last season next year with the Vikings. And it will give the next young quarterback, most likely, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase for their number 1 and number 2 receivers out wide. Adam Thielen's already into his 30s. Yes, he signed through 2025, but there's no way he's going to play out that entire contract. They can get out from that deal with only a couple $1 million in dead cap after the 2021 season. I think this is more of a best player available. Gregory Rousseau might be a bigger need with what they need on that roster in terms of an edge rusher. But he's kind of an unknown. He had the one breakout season as a redshirt freshman. And now we're not going to see him play football again at the collegiate level. Jamar Chase, you get a very polished wide receiver that can do it all. Joe Burrow's favorite target from that epic season last year. So maybe not the biggest need, but just best player available here for a Vikings team that needs more juice on offense.
Yeah, I like that. I've had Chase going to the Vikings in previous mock drafts. The most recent one I had them taking Trey Lance, who you mentioned, in part because, as you pointed out, Kirk Cousins has 1 year left on his deal. That's a perfect situation for Trey Lance to sit, which I like. But again, it's hard to pass on Jamar Chase when you need players for Kirk Cousins to throw the ball to. You mentioned Gregory Rousseau. I have him going 10th, the edge rusher out of Miami. I have him going 10th to the Dolphins, who need to get a little more explosive off the edge there. Rousseau, as you mentioned, he opted out, so he's not playing. He's just a recently turned edge rusher. He had 15.5 sacks last year, which certainly got everyone's attention. We would have loved to see him come back this year. Quincy Roche is playing also for the Hurricanes, and he's been up and down, but he also has some first round, second round buzz. But Rousseau looks the part. He's 6'5", 6'6". He's 260, 270, whatever he is there. Explosive. But I know some of the concerns are the lack of consistency because he hasn't played there a lot. A lot of his sacks came inside, which also you're not going to see at the next level. So you have to be willing to project him at the next level. And look, we do it all the time. We just talk about Kwity Paye. The only issue is Kwity Paye is playing right now, and Gregory Rousseau isn't. And I'm not going to begrudge the kid for opting out, but that's the reality of being a top 5 pick and maybe going 25 or 26. But anyway, I have the Dolphins taking Greg Rousseau.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. He's not a pure edge rusher. I think Kwity Paye is just more of a, pin his ears back from one of those outside roles. Gregory Rousseau, you want to move him around, but at around 6'6" or 6'7" and already 265 at such a young age, I think he has like Hall of Fame upside, because if you could pack 5 or 10 more pounds onto that frame and move him around with how tightly he can bend the corner around the edge or when he's twisting, really the sky's the limit for him. And you're right, the Dolphins have played better on defense this year than they did last year. They brought in a lot of free agents, but they need that player that offenses have to game plan to stop. I don't think they have that one right now. And even if Rousseau isn't the most polished prospects, I think right away, because of the athleticism and the size, offensive coordinators will first circle him on the board and say, we need to stop this player, even as a rookie.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Next up, the Panthers at number 12. Teddy Bridgewater has been playing out of his mind. Chris, knowing that, what do you have him doing?
Well, it's a similar situation to what you were referencing about Trey Lance potentially going to the Minnesota Vikings, sitting for a year and playing. I have the Carolina Panthers picking the North Dakota State quarterback, sitting for a year behind Teddy Bridgewater. And you're right, he's played very well. I think the Joe Brady system is awesome for him. He's one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the league. Do I think that Matt Rule wants Teddy Bridgewater to be his quarterback for the next decade? Probably not. And I think because Teddy Bridgewater doesn't have all the physical tools, but he's very cerebral, knows where to go with the football, very accurate, he's the perfect mentor for Trey Lance, who has all the athleticism, hasn't played very much, and needs to get better reading coverages, deciding where to go with the football if his first read is covered. So I think it would just be a perfect situation, not playing as a rookie, and then in 2022 taking over.
Yep, and just to be clear, the Panthers picked 11th, not 12th, excuse me. Trey Lance, quarterback out of North Dakota State there, replacing Teddy B. Incredibly athletic, plays in a run-heavy scheme in North Dakota State. They only had one little showcase game this year against Arkansas State. It's really hard to take anything away from that. So there are a lot of questions about him, but there's certainly no questioning his upside. All right, number 12, the Dallas Cowboys, another team that is truly and utterly terrible on both sides of the ball, even more so on defense because Dak Prescott is injured for the year. So I had them taking cornerback Caleb Farley out of Virginia Tech. He is also opted out this year. I think he had some family members that were sick, and I certainly understand that. The Cowboys drafted Trevon Diggs in the second round last year to Alabama, big, physical, strong corner who's been up and down this year, but that defense has been up and down as well. Caleb Farley, converted wide receiver, hasn't played a ton of cornerback, but again, a big, physical, strong, fast kid. And again, we talk about this a lot with some of these picks in the top 12. Huge upside guy, and there's an argument to be made that he's the number one cornerback going along with Patrick Surtain out of Alabama. I like Surtain a little better, but Caleb Farley here, that seems like I'm okay with that. How do you feel about it?
Well, I think it would be a really good compliment to Trevon Diggs. That, like you mentioned, he's a big physical press corner, but doesn't have a lot of speed or agility. With Caleb Farley, he's still tall. He can play against those 6'1" and up wide receivers. But I think the fact that he has the experience at wide receiver has allowed him to really recognize routes half a step quicker than other cornerbacks. And he's a little more loose hip. So he can deal with wide receivers in the slot if he needs to, or just smaller, faster wide receivers that are quick. I think this would be a great pick for the Cowboys as they start to rebuild that defense. And who knows, maybe Mike McCarthy won't even be there to do it, but they need to just go defense, defense, defense all the way through the 2021 draft as they're tracking right now.
Yeah, I've had them taking defensive player in all 8 mock drafts except one, and that's when I had them taking a tight end. That's the least of their concerns right now. All right, here we go. Dallas Cowboys at 12, number 13, the Los Angeles Superchargers. What do you got?
I have them picking Rashawn Slater, the left tackle from Northwestern. And watching the film over the summer, and I got into a little Twitter argument with someone about which offensive tackle played the best against Chase Young last year. Jalen Mayfield from Michigan did very well. Rashawn Slater, to me, held his own against the number 2 overall pick in the 2020 draft better than any other blocker I watched. He's a little smaller. He's 6'4", around 310 pounds. He reminds me of Jonah Williams, that he is a technician from his footwork, hand placement, his balance, his recovery skills. I just think he's kind of another boring blocker that you're not going to see as a liability in the run or pass game. And with Justin Herbert, the Chargers need to prioritize building that offensive line. I feel like you could say that over the last 10 off seasons for the Chargers. But Rashawn Slater, not a flashy pick, not a freak athlete, but someone that is just going to block everything that's in front of him.
I remember watching the Stanford game over the summer, and very rarely I watch an offensive lineman and get super excited. I was excited with how well Rashawn Slater played. I know there's some injury concerns. I know some scouts want to kick him inside at the next level. Wherever he ends up, I think he's going to be a really good player if he can stay healthy. I love that pick there. Number 14, Matt Patricia's Detroit Lions. I think Matt Patricia saved his job, which is crazy to think about. I had them taking Devonta Smith, arguably the best wide receiver at Alabama, not only this year, but also last year when they had, some of the best pass catchers on planet Earth. But Devonta Smith, undersized. He probably weighs about 175. How is that going to translate to the NFL? As you mentioned about Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith plays much bigger than his size. He has incredible hands. He runs a 4.52. He is much faster than that. The Lions need help at wide receiver because Galladay is in the final year of his deal. What's Marvin's last name? I never remember Marvin's last name.
Jones.
Marvin Jones is in the last year of his deal. Amendola is in the last year of his deal. So they have needs there. Presumably Matthew Stafford's going to be there. I don't know if they'll move on from him or not, but if they don't, or even if they do, Devonta Smith, given his ability to come in right away and contribute, I like him there. Are you at all concerned about the size?
That's the only concern I have. And watching him every week, I wonder, he's in his 4th year in the Alabama program, how he doesn't look any bigger. Like, don't they have a weight room? Don't they have like a weight room that's better than some NFL teams' weight rooms? That's a little weird to me, but you're right that watching this spindly player produce more than Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs and even Jalen Waddle last year was incredible. I feel like every week we see him make a ridiculous catch either near the sideline or in the back corner of the end zone that looks like he has no business catching. And like you mentioned, he can come in and contribute immediately. He's a very savvy route runner. And yes, I think he plays bigger than his size and he's way faster than running in the 4.5s if that's what he ultimately times at the combine. And really with Matthew Stafford in his early 30s, he's shown that he can still be a quality quarterback. Get him some more weapons. Even if you do re-sign Kenny Galladay, get him a good secondary target in Devonta Smith, who you don't have to wait a few years for him to start to produce.
Yeah, that's right. All right, number 15, the Los Angeles, Oakland, Las Vegas Raiders. Again, a team that's not very good defensively. Derek Carr's actually played pretty well. He continues to silence the doubters. What do you have them doing at 15, Chris?
I have them picking Javon Holland, the safety from Oregon. And he's another one. He opted out and decided not to opt back in after the Pac-12 announced that they were going to play games this fall. 9 interceptions in his first 2 years with the Ducks. He's a little bit undersized, and I don't think he's a crazy athlete, but his instincts are obviously through the roof. And watching him in 2018, his freshman season, they let him just play deep middle free safety, and he had those 5 picks. Then last year, they put more on his plate. He played slot corner. He played linebacker at times, played on the boundary as a cornerback, strong safety, free safety, really did it all. His tackle numbers went up, and he still had those 4 interceptions. And I think John Gruden is like obsessed with beating the Chiefs, and the Raiders have already done that this year. They draft Henry Ruggs to kind of be their Tyreek Hill. I think Javon Holland can kind of be their Tyrann Mathieu as this smaller slot corner that can play pretty much any position on the back end. There's not going to be a lot of buzz about Javon Holland because he's not going to play, but 9 interceptions in 2 seasons speaks for itself.
Yeah, I actually like Javon Holland a lot. He also returns punts, which is worth noting. And as I'm looking back at these mock drafts, I had the Raiders taking Dylan Moses, a linebacker, Kwity Paye, the edge rusher we've talked about, and I even had him taking Trey Lance a few weeks ago. But again, as I mentioned, Derek Carr is holding his own. So Derek Carr, once again, I apologize. Number 16, the Philadelphia Eagles, Debo's team. They rarely, almost never take a linebacker in the first round. They need a linebacker, so I'm going to have them take Dylan Moses, the linebacker from Alabama. Is he at his 2018 form? Not yet. He suffered an ACL injury in August 2019, didn't play at all last season. He looked a little inconsistent and perhaps a little nervous about the knee in the first few games. He played a lot better on Saturday, I thought, and I think he's going to continue to get better and back to that 2017 form, or the 2018 form, excuse me, as he gets more comfortable with the knee. He's explosive. He's next in a long line of Alabama linebackers that can get after the middle of the field. So the Eagles get someone in the middle of that defense to help them. Not great news for Carson Wentz, but hopefully that team can somehow get healthy on the other side of the ball. What do you think about Dylan Moses?
Yeah, I don't know what it is about Howie Roseman because he's one of the best GMs in the NFL, but he does not like picking linebackers early. I don't know if it's the scheme. Jim Schwartz doesn't like it. But I think this would be a perfect marriage of need and value. That Dylan Moses, any higher inside the top 10, I think is a little bit too early because, like you said, I think he's a little hesitant still. But he's another one like Micah Parsons, the other linebacker that is really being rumored to go early in the first round. Has looked the part. He was a big recruit and played as a freshman and looked like a future first-round pick. The Eagles need a lot. They've dealt with a lot of injuries. They could use more wide receivers, but they did invest in 3 wide receivers in the 2020 draft. Dylan Moses, a smart and safe pick, uncharacteristic for the Eagles, but that's what they should do in the 2021 first round.
Well, here's something that's sort of fun. The Patriots are picking 17th, according to the reverse Super Bowl odds from Sportsline, because they are right now not a good football team. So if you're Bill Belichick, what are you doing at 17, Chris, to make this team better? Hopefully you're getting the quarterback some help or getting a quarterback.
Yeah, we could have a little argument here because, yes, the most glaring need is offense because they have the worst skill position group in the NFL, bar none. After that Seattle game early in the season, everyone thought Cam Newton was going to sign like a $200 million extension with the Patriots. I don't know if that's going to be the case anymore. Jarrett Stidham doesn't look like the answer at quarterback. So this could maybe be another quarterback, the 4th in the first round. But I'm actually going to go to the defensive side because I think beyond how stagnant the Patriots have been on offense, the defense hasn't really been as good as it was last year when it was just epically stifling against pretty much every offense it faced. I'm picking Levi Onwuzurike, the defensive lineman from Washington. He's another one. He opted out. Is not going to play this year, so there won't be a lot of buzz for him. He reminds me of Trey Flowers. He's 6'3", around 280, 290 pounds, and can play up and down the defensive line. I think Bill Belichick would love that versatility. He actually fared very well as a nose tackle in 2018. They let him rush the passer a lot more frequently in 2019. 3-down player, great against the run, a lot of power in his hands. I think Bill Belichick will want to get a little stronger in the trenches to help out all that man coverage that the Patriots like to play.
I actually love this kid. I remember watching him over the summer, being really impressed, and was bummed out when he decided to opt out. He's listed at 287. He plays much bigger than that. So we'll see what happens. But if you told me he snuck into the first round, it would not surprise me. In terms of players that I've had going to New England in recent drafts, Pat Freiermuth, Debo's guy, tight end from Penn State, Kyle Trask, the quarterback who's having a good year at Florida and who has some physical limitations that may prevent him from going that high. But as we talked about, offense is clearly a need there. But defense, I think ranks 25th according to Football Outsiders. That ain't the defense we saw last year when Steph Gilmore was balling out. Number 18, the Cleveland Browns. On paper, this team should be really, really good. In reality, they're actually not terrible. And I think it all starts with Baker Mayfield. Unfortunately, Odell Beckham tore his ACL, so he's done for the year. But they need help on defense. Myles Garrett can't do it all by himself. They've had some injuries on the back end, so some of the young players have not been able to get on the field, and they're stuck watching Andrew Sendejo miss tackles. But up front, I think they need some help as well. I have them taking Christian Barmore, the defensive lineman at Alabama. He reminds me a little bit in terms of his ascent in the minds of draft Twitter and even scouts of Quinnen Williams, who didn't start, who didn't come out of nowhere. We knew who Quinnen Williams was, but got an opportunity to play and then just balled out his junior year in 2018. When was that? 2018?
2018, yeah.
Yeah, and then was a top 5, top 6 pick, I think. I think Barmore has a chance to have that similar type of scent. Hopefully, once he gets to the NFL, he doesn't go to the Jets and have the same things happen to him that happened to Quinnen Williams. But slow start to the year. He was injured. I don't think he played in the first game against Missouri. Slowly was sort of eased back into it. And then when you watch the last 2 weeks, he flashes. He's either knocking down passes. He's either in the backfield being disruptive in the run and the pass game. He's a better pass rusher right now than run stopper, and that's okay. But you want to see a little balance there, and I think he'll get better doing those things. And I think he helps the Browns. He makes life easier for Myles Garrett. So I have Christian Barmore, again, another high upside guy going to Cleveland.
Yeah, and this is not a very good defensive tackle class. So this would probably be right now most likely the consensus number one defensive tackle, just because of what you mentioned, the pass rush ability. They have Larry Ogunjobi there in Cleveland, who is an elite run defender. Doesn't give you a lot, though, on those third and long situations, those critical downs where teams are passing the football. I think with Ogunjobi, with Myles Garrett, and then you add Christian Barmore, who's athletic and uses his hands very well. For someone that hasn't played a lot of snaps, he certainly knows how to defeat blocks at the point of attack. I really like that pick for the Browns.
All right, let's get the Pac-12 train going. You are the Pac-12 unofficial spokesperson. Colts at 19. Who do you like?
Thomas Graham, the cornerback from Oregon. And I realized I wrote the Pac-12 preview for CBSSports.com. So I think that's why I've kind of like leaned toward Pac-12 players, because I watched a lot of them over the summer. Thomas Graham, another one, an opt-out, so we're not going to see him play. But 32 pass breakups, 8 interceptions in his 3 seasons at Oregon, 28 of those pass breakups the last 2 years. And regardless of where he lines up, in the slot, on the boundary, down the field, underneath, you just see him making plays. I think he's got great instincts. He's not the biggest corner, but he plays bigger. He's got a really nice vertical. I think he's going to jump through the roof in Indianapolis at the Combine. The Colts, they've gotten good play out of Xavier Rhodes, but he is a free agent after this season. And you look at the rest of the secondary. Rocky Sin, their second-round pick from 2019, hasn't really lived up to that draft status. Kenny Moore, they need to inject some youth to that secondary. Yeah, there are other needs, but I really like Thomas Graham just as a playmaker. Plug him into your secondary, and he's going to knock down a lot of passes.
I'm with you. I like Thomas Graham a lot, too. All right, 20, the 49ers. I have them taking Georgia cornerback Tyson Campbell. Long, fast, physical, playmaker. I like a lot of things about his game. If you watch the Alabama game, he struggled at times, but again, he's playing against Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith. But I think that he has a chance to be a really good player at the next level. A projection on some parts because he didn't play a lot last year, but certainly the 49ers need help there. I think Richard Sherman's in the final year of his deal. And so I think Tyson Campbell at 20 makes some sense. You can end up going higher than that. So let's go to 21. This is where things get interesting, Chris. You're the first person I've seen have this kid go in round 1. He certainly made a lot of noise the first few weeks of the season. Who are the Bears taking at number 21?
BYU quarterback Zach Wilson. And this is a go big or go home pick. And I think if you're Matt Nagy, if you're GM Ryan Pace in Chicago, you're sitting there at 5-2. If they end up winning 9 or 10 games, sneak into the playoffs, I think their jobs will be safe, but they will be entering a go big or go home season. You know Mitchell Trubisky is not the answer at the quarterback spot. You know it's not Nick Foles either. Zach Wilson, he could bust out of the league. They're calling him the Mormon Manziel, and if you watch him, you see the stylistic similarities, or he could end up being a Russell Wilson type. Very good improvising outside the pocket, almost completing 80% of his passes in the first month and a half of the season, 13 touchdowns, 1 pick. He's also run for 6 touchdowns. I really like his decision-making and his arm strength. He's bigger than Manziel was, around 6'3". So this would certainly raise some eyebrows, but if Jordan Love can go in the first round, I think so can Zach Wilson.
That's a great point. Zach Wilson is just as much the athlete as Jordan Love, has probably close to the arm strength and makes 99% fewer mistakes. And unlike Manziel, who he does look like on the field, all you hear about is how hard he works, how much he's training. I think he was driving 10 hours a day to work with his quarterbacks coach before the season started. He also reminds me a little bit of Baker Mayfield. So if you took Mayfield and Manziel took the best parts of their game, there's certainly something to that. Now, the level of competition is a concern. But again, Jordan Love played the same level of competition. So here we are. I don't hate that pick at all. All right, number 22, Chris Trapasso's Bills. I have them taking Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the linebacker out of Notre Dame. He plays just about everywhere. He, again, the latest in these line of physical or athletic linebackers that can line up middle of the field, in the slot, cover. What do you think about this as a Bills fan?
Well, Matt Milano is set to hit free agency, and Tremaine Edmonds, the other linebacker there in Buffalo, hasn't really played very well in his 3rd season in the same system under Sean McDermott. But there's some speculation that the Bills might actually let Matt Milano walk. He's dealt with a couple injuries in his career there in Buffalo. If they let Matt Milano leave in free agency, that Notre Dame linebacker, I'm not going to try to pronounce his full last name, is the perfect Matt Milano replacement, that he does a lot of things that Matt Milano does very well. Covers down the field, had that great interception deep down the field that a lot of linebackers can't cover for that far, and then have the awareness to turn around and catch the football, range for days, sideline to sideline. And I think for being a smaller linebacker, he plays with reckless abandon as a blitzer. And that's really what Matt Milano has done and what he's meant to this defense. So if Matt Milano's not there, I think they will target a speedy linebacker in the first round.
All right, number 23, the Tennessee Titans. They have A.J. Brown. I think Corey Dillon might be Corey Dillon. That would be awesome. Corey Dillon was in last year's deal. Corey Davis in last year of his deal, I do believe. Who do you have the Titans targeting at 23?
Rashad Bateman, wide receiver from Minnesota. And that's just with the thought that we're all on this Derrick Henry train right now, and rightfully so. I mean, to run away from defensive backs at 6'3" and 250 pounds is ridiculous. But at some point in the next year or so, the Titans are going to have to start to transition to a more pass-happy offense. They can't just give Derrick Henry 400 touches a season and expect the same production. You're right, Corey Davis is a free agent at the end of the season. To pair Rashad Bateman with A.J. Brown, I think would be a great tandem, and that they're both very well-rounded wide receivers. I don't think Bateman's going to run 4.3. He's not going to jump 40 inches. A.J. Brown didn't have a ridiculous combine either, but they're good after the catch, very good ball skills, run good routes, can play them inside, outside. I think that would be a nice 1-2 punch at the receiver spot for Ryan Tannehill there in Nashville.
Yeah, I like Rashad Bateman a lot. I want to see him separate more this season. And that's going to be a huge, huge part of where he ends up getting drafted. 24, the Jaguars are back on the clock. They drafted, I had them taking Justin Fields at number 2. Now at number 24, I had them taking Florida tight end Kyle Pitts, easily the most athletic tight end in this class. And that's no disrespect to Freiermuth of Penn State and Brevin Jordan of Miami, but he's athletic. He can block a little bit, but he is a threat at every single level of the field. And I think that gives Justin Fields a security blanket, which he will almost certainly need if he's in Jacksonville.
And is Kyle Pitts really a tight end? I mean, I feel like watching him, he's basically just a big wide receiver.
Right.
I actually wrote a scouting profile on him a few weeks ago, and watching his film this year at Florida when he started off with 6 touchdowns in the first 6 quarters that he played, there was a lot of route running nuance to his game. Like, he understood how to change the pace of how fast he was running to kind of lull cornerbacks to sleep and then accelerate down the field. Great after the catch. I think for as much as we're talking about getting as many good wide receivers as you can for your young quarterback, if you can get him a 6'6", 240-pound tight end that plays like a wide receiver, that's as comfortable as anything for a young quarterback. So if it is Justin Fields at 2, Kyle Pitts makes a lot of sense for the Jaguars with their second first-round pick.
Yeah, and you can call Kyle Pitts, Anquan Bolden, Juju Smith-Schuster if you want. If that makes you feel better. That's the type of player he is, and he comes in and contributes right away. All right, let's speed around these things, Chris. We'll shorten it up a little bit, but we'll get to these guys. 25, the Cardinals are on the clock. What are the Cardinals doing?
I'm picking Rashad Weaver, the defensive lineman from Pittsburgh. It could be his teammate, Patrick Jones. They're both 6'5", 270 pounds. To me, Weaver's production is a little bit better this year, and he's improved his statistics every season at Pitt. They need help opposite Chandler Jones. He's going to be 31 next year, coming off a torn bicep. I think if you look at this Cardinals team, you see great offense. The offensive line's really not a problem. They have the running backs. They have some playmakers in the secondary, Budda Baker. Hopefully Isaiah Simmons takes a step forward. They need more juice up front on their defensive line. Rashad Weaver, I think, will be a late riser just because he's gotten better every year in college.
I love that. Jalen Twyman's another defensive lineman for the Pitt Panthers. That defensive line is legit. At 26, the Saints are on the clock. I have them taking Mac Jones. If Zach Wilson was surprised, Mac Jones might be a little bit of a surprise here at 26. We know Drew Brees can't throw the ball more than 5 yards downfield. Mac Jones is the best deep ball thrower in college football. Last year, we were thinking, okay, he's just filling in for Tua. He's a typical sort of backup Alabama quarterback that comes in and does A.J. McCarron type things. He's good. He's really good. Yes, he's playing with great players, but Tua was playing with great players last year. I think he has a chance to come in and sneak into the first round. I like him better than Kyle Trask, who I'm a big fan of. He has a better arm. He seems to be as good, if not better. Pre-snap, he doesn't get rattled in the pocket. I like Mac Jones maybe more than most people. I don't know. How do you feel about Mac?
Yeah, and I think he would work well in that Sean Payton system because he doesn't have a huge arm. It is better than Kyle Trask, but the fact that he shows at Alabama, yes, he can drop it in the bucket down the field. I really like that about his game, but he's also a good decision maker and can throw in rhythm, on target, underneath. And we know that Sean Payton's system really prioritizes that. If Tua can go inside the top 5, I think Mac Jones could go in the first round. And if there's Kyle Trask buzz, there's no reason why Mac Jones can't go late in the first round to a good team with the Saints.
All right, 27, the Green Bay Packers. Under no circumstances are they allowed to take a wide receiver in the first round. What are you doing?
I'm picking a wide receiver in the first round. So Aaron Rodgers will be ecstatic about this. Rondale Moore, the wide receiver from Purdue, it's breaking. I don't know when the last time they picked a wide receiver in the first round. It seems like it was before I was born. Rondale Moore, over 1,200 yards as a true freshman. And anytime, video spot, radio spot, when I bring up Rondale Moore, I talk about that 2018 Purdue upset over Ohio State, where there was probably 15 future NFL players on the field. And Rondale Moore at 18 years old was the best player on the field that night. Electric playmaker, underneath, yards after the catch. I think he's going to run somewhere in the high 4.3s at the combine. He is a little bit smaller, but they've really invested in these bigger receivers in Green Bay. Time to get another separator to complement Devontae Adams.
Javon Walker, 2002, the last time the Packers took a wide receiver in round 1. I love Rondale Moore. I wish he had been healthy last year, only played 4 games. I wish he were playing this year. But yeah, there's so much explosiveness there, and he also adds something in the return game. 28, the Jets. And this is part of the Jamal Adams trade, and this is a theme here. I have them taking Penn State tight end Pat Freiermuth, just like I had Justin Fields getting help with Kyle Pitts, the tight end from Florida. I have Trevor Lawrence getting help with Pat Freiermuth. Insanely athletic, not as athletic as Pitts, but right up there. He'd have been the first overall tight end taken last year had he come out. He's also a really good blocker, threatens the defense down the middle of the field. So I think that pick makes some sense there. 29, the Steelers. My Steelers are on the clock. What are they doing, Chris?
Shaun Wade, and this is a best player available along with a need pick. So this would be perfect for the Steelers. Mike Hilton, to me, their most underappreciated defender, slot cornerback, is set to hit free agency after the season. And Shaun Wade, that's his position. And you could think, why would you pick a nickel cornerback inside the first round? There's not the value there, but there is. I mean, every team's running 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers most of the time. So Shaun Wade, big recruit, all the athleticism you need. He's probably going to get to play a little bit on the boundary this year to just kind of show if he could play there. But you pick him the late part of the first round, plug him into that Mike Hilton role, blitzing off the corner and just covering slot receivers. Shaun Wade has the physical skill set and the tools, which a lot of corners don't have to play that difficult position.
Actually, when you sell it to me like that, I sort of like it. Mike Hilton isn't going to cover anyone as well as say Cam Sutton would. Shaun Wade still has some things to work on as a coverage cornerback, but he can play in the slot and come off the edge and blitz. And that, in my mind, makes a lot of sense. At number 30, the Ravens are on the clock. The Ravens draft wide receivers. The wide receivers rarely seem to work out, at least immediately. Hollywood Brown, I like. Miles Boykin, I like. But those guys are either injured or just still trying to find their way. I have them taking LSU wide receiver Terrace Marshall, who is a big, fast target. We know what he did last year as part of that team with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. This year, he is the only show in town. That offense isn't nearly what it used to be a year ago. He had 46 receptions last year in 12 games. He already has 27 in 4 games. He's averaging 19 yards a catch. He already has 9 touchdowns. A big target for Lamar Jackson down the field. At 31, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they just signed Antonio Brown, so I'm assuming they don't need any more wide receiver help. What are they doing at 31, Chris?
All right, I'm just going to go with a fun pick here. I don't know if it's the best value, and they could maybe go defensive line with Ndamukong Suh getting up there in age. I'm going Travis Etienne, the running back from Clemson. Yes, Ronald Jones has played pretty well over the last couple of weeks. He looks like their feature back, but how long do players really remain as a team's feature back? It's not set in stone that it's going to be 2, 3, 4 years. And with ETN, you get an electric runner. He's the number 1 running back across the board. I really like what Najee Harris has done at Alabama, but he doesn't have the same athleticism and twitch that Travis Etienne does. He averages 7.6 yards per carry in his career at Clemson on 601 attempts. That's insane. And he's an amazing wide receiver. Over 12 yards per catch starting in 2019 to today. So if Tom Brady wants to dink and dunk, he wouldn't be dink and dunking to an undrafted free agent that is an overachiever. He could be throwing a check down to a very explosive player in Travis Etienne.
Yeah, I've had ATN going to the Bucks because they have very few needs. That defense is really good, and I think it makes them even more exciting to watch. All right, one more pick in the first round, number 32. The Chiefs are on the clock. I have them taking offensive lineman Trey Smith from Tennessee. He has played tackle in his past. He now plays guard. He's another road grader. He's number 2 for me among all the guards after Wyatt Davis. Kelechi Osemele is an unrestricted free agent for the Chiefs. Andrew Wiley's going to be a restricted free agent. This team has very few needs, but if you're going to protect someone, why not protect the $250 million quarterback you have in Patrick Mahomes? So I'm going Trey Smith there. And that's a wrap on the first round. This is our first sort of Pick Six YouTube exclusive mock draft. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Chris, thanks for your input. Good talk. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. If you haven't already subscribed, check out the Pick Six podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, and we'll talk soon.